Welcome to Love Lies Chronicles.
It was a Thursday night. I remember that because I'd just gotten back from a brutal day, back-to-back meetings, a pile of contracts needing review, and a late phone call that ran past dinner. My only plan was to come home, sink into the couch, and share a quiet moment with my wife. Maybe talk. Maybe watch something mindless on Netflix. Just something that made me feel like the world slowed down a bit when I was with her. But when I stepped into the house, she didn't look up from her laptop. Just sat at the dining table, legs tucked under her, the screen casting a cold glow across her face. I said hi. She mumbled something without even turning her head. I went to the kitchen, poured us both a glass of wine, and brought hers over. She didn't touch it. I thought maybe she was in one of her moods again. Work stress, maybe. I'd learned to give her space when she needed it, even if I was never offered the same courtesy. We had barely exchanged 10 words when she finally closed her laptop and turned toward me. Her eyes were steady, her tone measured, too measured, like she'd practiced it in her head. "We need to set some new rules," she said, as if she were the HR manager and I was the employee being reprimanded. I leaned forward slightly, trying not to overreact. "Okay. What kind of rules?" She didn't hesitate. "You want to be intimate with me, right? That doesn't just happen. It has to be earned. So, from now on, there are conditions." I blinked. "Conditions?" She nodded. "Yes. Things you need to work on. Your tone when you talk to me. Your energy, sometimes you're too passive. Your attentiveness. Your listening skills. I've made a list." I laughed, thinking she was joking. She reached for her phone and started scrolling like she was pulling up a PDF. "I've been keeping notes. If you want us to be physically close again, I need to feel like my emotional needs are being met first. I'm not going to fake it anymore just because you want to reconnect." For a few seconds, I just stared at her. Not because of the absurdity, but because of how clinical it all sounded. There was no warmth in her voice, no care, no vulnerability. Just rules. Conditions. Like she was offering a performance contract. I took a slow breath. "So what happens if I don't meet your conditions?" She shrugged. "Then there's no intimacy. Simple as that. You can decide." I stared at her. My mind flicked through years of memories, holidays we planned together, late-night takeout on the couch, her laugh during road trips, the quiet I love yous whispered before sleep. And now this. My wife staring me down like a corporate auditor, essentially issuing an ultimatum for affection. I didn't raise my voice or plead. Something just turned off inside me. I set the wine glass down on the table. "You know what?" I said, quieter than I expected. "Keep it." She blinked. "What?" "I'm not negotiating for your affection. Not like this." Her brows furrowed. "I'm not withholding anything. I'm just setting boundaries." "No," I said. "What you're doing is dressing up manipulation in therapeutic language. That's not a boundary. That's control." She scoffed. "So you're just going to give up?" I stood up slowly. "No. I'm choosing not to grovel. There's a difference." She tried to say something, but I wasn't interested in her rationalization. Not right then. I walked to the living room and sat alone. The silence between us now felt colder than before, but it was different. Heavier. Later that night, she came to bed already asleep by the time I got in. Or pretending to be. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the air conditioner and the muffled sounds of traffic outside. That was the first night I didn't reach for her, didn't whisper anything, and she didn't seem to notice. The next morning, I woke up to find her already dressed, already gone. No note. No message. Just a quiet exit like we were two guests sharing a hotel room after an awkward event. I made my coffee and stood in the kitchen, staring out the window, not thinking about what she said, but about how she said it. With detachment. Like she knew I wouldn't dare push back. But here's the thing. When someone thinks you're too weak to walk away, that's exactly when they stop valuing what you bring. And when someone tries to control you with access to affection, they're not offering love. They're rationing power. She was about to find out what real rejection feels like. Because I wasn't going to fight for what should never have been made conditional in the first place. And I wasn't going to remind her what she lost. I was going to make sure she felt it. It started slowly. I didn't make a speech or slam doors or threaten divorce. I simply began removing myself, piece by piece, from the world we shared. The first change was subtle. I stopped texting her during the day. "No, how's your morning?" "No, need anything from the store?" Nothing. After that night, I realized, why stay tethered when the other end of the rope is being yanked around like a leash? At first, she didn't notice. Or maybe she did but chose not to comment. Either way, The silence became the new normal, and I wasn't in any rush to break it. Then I started coming home later. Not suspiciously late, just enough to miss dinner. I joined a gym near the office. Spent more time in meetings. Grabbed drinks with coworkers I used to turn down. The truth is, I wasn't doing anything wrong. I was just no longer rushing home to someone who treated intimacy like a prize at the end of a maze. She texted one evening around 7:45. "Where are you?" I responded, "Still out. Eat without me." No explanation. Just a statement. That's what she wanted, right? Emotional clarity? Boundaries? When I finally walked through the door that night, she was curled up on the couch, arms crossed, a bowl of untouched pasta in front of her. "You could have let me know earlier," she said. "I didn't think you'd care," I replied, hanging up my coat without looking at her. "I always care," she snapped. "No, you don't," I said quietly, grabbing a glass of water and heading to the bedroom. We slept with a pillow barrier between us that night. She didn't say goodnight. I didn't reach for her. The emotional distance had become tangible now. Thick. But I wasn't bitter. I was composed in a way that I hadn't been in a long time. That weekend, I went hiking. Alone. I didn't ask if she wanted to join. When I got back, she was sitting on the back porch scrolling through her phone. She looked up, surprised. "You went somewhere?" "Yeah," I said. Cleared my head. She studied me like she was trying to read a language she hadn't used in years. "You didn't tell me. You didn't ask." I walked inside. Her silence trailed behind me like a cloud of perfume, faint, lingering, unresolved. And then came the first moment she cracked. One night, maybe a week later, she came into the bedroom wearing that silk robe, the one she used to wear when she wanted to draw me in. She didn't say a word, just slipped into bed beside me and placed a hand on my chest. I didn't flinch. She leaned in slightly, her voice soft. "I've missed you." I stared at the ceiling. "Have you?" She didn't answer. Instead, she let her hand linger, waiting for me to pull her closer like I used to. I turned away. Her hand dropped like dead weight between us. She didn't try again that night. From there, her unease started to show. Small things at first, lingering in rooms I was in, asking if I wanted to join her for errands, trying to spark conversations about things she normally ignored. But I gave her nothing extra. Just neutral civility, cordial indifference. And the more composed I was, the more unsteady she became. I started getting compliments at work. "You're looking sharp lately. New haircut. You seem different." I had stopped chasing validation from someone who saw love as leverage. I hadn't made a list of demands. All I did was step away from her game, and that, more than anything, unraveled her confidence. One evening, we were watching something forgettable on TV. Or rather, she was pretending to. I could feel her eyes on me every few minutes, searching for signs of the old version of me, the version that tried so hard to make her happy, that would have bent over backward just to earn a few crumbs of connection. That version was gone. "I feel like you're shutting me out," she said suddenly. I muted the TV. "You said I had to earn affection. I'm just respecting your terms." Her mouth opened, then closed. She wasn't used to her own logic being reflected back. "This isn't what I meant," she whispered. "No, it's exactly what you meant." She stared at me like she didn't recognize the man sitting beside her. And maybe she didn't. But this version, the one she created with her conditions, was done trying to be worthy of affection that should have been freely given. That night, I slept soundly. She didn't. I could feel her shifting beside me, restless. Like someone trying to solve a puzzle they created but could no longer figure out. She had drawn her lines in the sand and expected me to stay within them. Instead, I walked right past them. And that my silence, my lack of pursuit, was the first rejection she ever truly felt. It was during a routine team lunch at work that the first ripple started to spread. Lisa, one of the new hires in marketing, leaned across the table and said, "Your energy's changed lately." In a good way. More confident. I raised an eyebrow, surprised she'd noticed. "I guess I've just been focusing on myself more." She smiled. "Well, it shows." That conversation was brief, harmless, but something about it stayed with me. Not because I was flattered, though I'd be lying if I said it didn't feel good to hear, but because it reminded me that other people, outside my wife's small sphere of influence, saw me, respected me. It had been so long since I'd felt that at home. That same evening, when I got back, my wife was already seated at the kitchen counter, sipping a glass of wine. Her posture was relaxed, but her eyes followed me too closely, like she was trying to detect some shift in my demeanor. "You seem happy," she said without lifting her glass. I shrugged. "I had a good day." "Anything special happen?" "Nope." Just solid all around. She nodded slowly, but I caught the brief flicker of something on her face. Uncertainty, maybe even suspicion. I went upstairs, took a quick shower, and when I came back down, she was scrolling through my phone. I stopped in the doorway. Looking for something? She startled. Oh, sorry. You left it unlocked. I thought I heard a text come in. I walked over, picked it up from her hand without saying a word, and slid it into my pocket. You know, I said, trust is a funny thing. She tried to laugh, but it came out stiff. I wasn't checking, just curious. Of course. I left it at that, but I knew what was happening. She was losing control, and she could feel it. The next few days brought more cracks. I started dressing sharper, not to impress her, but because I wanted to reclaim the parts of myself I'd let fade. I bought cologne I used to wear years ago. None of it was loud, none of it confrontational, but it spoke volumes. She began hovering, making dinner more often, asking what I wanted to watch, what I felt like eating if I needed anything from the store. The sudden attentiveness would have been endearing months ago. Now it felt performative, like she was trying to patch holes in a boat she had drilled into herself. One Saturday afternoon, we were at a mutual friend's birthday party. I was having a casual conversation with a couple of people when she joined the group, wrapping her arm through mine like a flag being staked into territory. The other woman, a colleague of mine, smiled and said, "You two seem close." My wife's grip tightened. "We are. Aren't we, babe?" I just smiled politely. "We used to be." That answer lingered a little too long. I felt her arm slowly fall away. Later that night, she brought it up. What was that supposed to mean? Just being honest. She crossed her arms. "You made it sound like we're over." I didn't raise my voice. I just told the truth. "We've been over for a while. You just didn't notice until now." She stared at me like I'd slapped her. "You're really enjoying this, aren't you?" she said, her voice shaky. "No, but I'm no longer losing myself trying to keep this thing alive." It was the first time I saw tears well up in her eyes since this all began. But I didn't reach for her. Because I wasn't the villain in this story. I was the man she once loved, who had given her years of effort, devotion, and patience, until she turned our marriage into a barter system. And now, for the first time, she was standing on the other side of that transaction. That night, she climbed into bed long after I did. She didn't move closer, but I heard her breathing, uneven. The next morning, she was in the kitchen, coffee already brewed. She looked up when I entered. "I've been thinking." "About what?" "Maybe I went too far," she said quietly. I waited. I didn't mean to weaponize anything. "I know." We stood there in silence for a moment. Then she asked, "Can we fix this?" I tilted my head slightly. "You'd have to define fix. You said you needed rules. I've simply stopped playing." For a moment, her facade broke. She looked lost. "You said you wanted more respect," I continued. "But respect doesn't come from control. It comes from trust, appreciation, and mutual effort, none of which you offered. So I stopped offering too." Her eyes flickered, trying to gauge if there was a way back. But I gave her nothing. No smile, no hint of reconciliation. Just truth. And the truth was, she was beginning to understand what it felt like to be on the receiving end of silence. This wasn't revenge. It was revelation. And she wasn't ready for it. It was a Tuesday afternoon when she finally crossed the line. I was in the middle of replying to an email when my phone lit up, not with a call, but a flurry of notifications. I saw her name at the top of my screen, over and over. 15 messages in a row, each one sharper than the last. "Who is Lisa? Don't play dumb. So this is why you've been acting different. You think I'm stupid? Are you sleeping with her? Answer me." At first, I just stared at the screen, amazed at the escalation. Then I placed the phone face down on my desk and went back to my work. It wasn't rage I felt. It was a strange, eerie calm, the kind that creeps in when you finally realize someone has lost the very control they tried so hard to maintain. That night, when I got home, she was waiting by the door. "You ignored me all day," she said. "I was working." "You saw the messages." "Yes." She looked at me like she was waiting for an explosion. Instead, I walked past her, setting my keys on the counter and taking off my jacket. "You didn't answer my question," she pressed. "No," I said flatly. "I'm not sleeping with her. But it's interesting that's where your mind went." She crossed her arms. "You've been different around her." I turned to face her. "And what if I have?" She talks to me like I'm a human being. Doesn't try to bend me into whatever shape suits her mood that week. Maybe I just enjoy not walking on eggshells. Her eyes narrowed. So you're emotionally cheating? No, I said. I'm emotionally recovering. That silenced her for a moment. She shook her head. I was just trying to make things better. To improve us. By giving me conditions? By holding intimacy hostage? You didn't want to fix anything. You wanted to win. She faltered, as if the ground beneath her had shifted without warning. I didn't know you were so resentful. I wasn't. Not until you made me feel like a chore. I watched her face, no longer confident. The cracks had spread too far. And the more she tried to assert herself, the more it all crumbled. Later that week, she tried something else. She showed up at my workplace with lunch. That might have meant something once, but now it just looked like an act, like someone dressing a wound they refused to acknowledge in the first place. I accepted the food, thanked her, ate it silently at my desk. She lingered, watching me. I didn't invite her to stay. Eventually, she left. But I wasn't cold. I was indifferent. And that scared her more than anything. Because for years, she'd counted on my eagerness. My predictable emotional vulnerability. That was gone now. A few days later, she made her last real attempt to take back control. We were at a small dinner with friends, nothing big, just 4 couples we'd known for a few years. The conversation had been light, casual. At some point, the topic shifted to relationships and rules couples had in place. I was quiet, sipping wine, when I heard her voice cut through the laughter. Well, I tried setting rules with him, she said, gesturing toward me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, but he just ran away from accountability. There was a brief pause, then nervous chuckles around the table. I set my glass down slowly. Actually, I said, what I walked away from was manipulation. She blinked. I have no issue with rules, mutual ones. But what she offered wasn't a framework for growth. It was an ultimatum, a checklist for obedience disguised as communication. The table went quiet. I didn't walk away from accountability. I walked away from being measured like an employee. One of the other women at the table muttered, "Yikes." She stared at me, stunned. I wasn't trying to embarrass her. I just wasn't willing to keep playing the part of the silent, accommodating husband who absorbed everything with a smile. After dinner, in the car, she finally said what had been boiling under the surface. "You humiliated me." "No," I replied. "You did that to yourself." I just stopped covering for it. She didn't speak the rest of the drive home. When we got back, she went straight to the bedroom. I stayed downstairs on the couch, finishing my glass of wine in silence. The next morning, she handed me a folded piece of paper. I expected a letter, some long emotional explanation. It was a schedule, a list of things we needed to restructure in our relationship. I didn't even open it. I set it down on the table and met her eyes. "You still don't get it, do you?" "What?" "This isn't about lists. It's not about systems. It's about the fact that I no longer believe you're capable of seeing me as a partner. You don't want connection. You want control." She stood there frozen. "I'm done pretending that if I check all your boxes, I'll finally be worthy of love. I was already worthy. You just didn't want to see it." And with that, I left the room. She didn't follow. That was the moment it all came undone for her, because I refused to keep playing a game where the rules changed every time she felt insecure. She had mistaken my patience for weakness. And now, stripped of her strategies and systems, she had nothing left but the weight of her own choices. The following week was a quiet war. She didn't speak much, but I could feel her trying to regain footing. Her movements became more careful, as if she believed politeness might reverse the unraveling. She made dinner more than once, played soft music in the background like we used to, even wore the perfume I'd once said I liked, back when we were still trying for each other. But the atmosphere had changed. It was absence, a void she had created, and now had no idea how to fill. And that's when she made her final move. She called her friends over one night under the pretense of a casual gathering. Just drinks, light chatter. Nothing dramatic. I wasn't warned. It was just they're stopping by for a bit. I didn't care. Let her have the illusion of control a little longer. What I didn't expect was how she used it. After the second glass of wine, she started talking. "I've just been through so much lately," she said, in that performative, trembling voice reserved for sympathy fishing. "He's completely shut down. Won't even try. I just wanted us to grow, and he punished me for it." They murmured in agreement, awkward nods and half-hearted comforts. But then she pushed it. "He's cold now. Emotionally cruel. I think he's seeing someone else." I didn't flinch. Just took a sip of my drink and waited. One of her friends, Tanya, gave her a look. "That's a serious accusation." She glanced at me. "You've seen the way he's been. Always distant, disappearing after work. Tanya turned to me, hesitant. Is that true? I smiled faintly. If not surrendering to control is cruelty, then I guess I'm guilty. The room grew still. But let's be honest, I continued, voice even, what she calls growth was never about us. It was about obedience, compliance, intimacy traded like currency. Her face paled. I didn't bring anyone into this, I said, looking at her. You did. And now, instead of owning the damage, you're painting yourself as a victim in a play you directed. The table stayed silent. One of the other women finally cleared her throat. I think, maybe we should go. She nodded quickly, eyes glassy. Yeah, of course. After they left, she didn't say a word. She just sat at the kitchen table, staring at nothing, the weight of public exposure finally sinking in. That was the moment I knew she had lost more than me. She had lost the narrative. Her friends weren't buying it. Her certainty had cracked, and what was left behind was someone desperately trying to rewrite a story everyone had already read. I simply grabbed the overnight bag I'd packed earlier that week and walked toward the door. Where are you going? She asked, voice barely above a whisper. Somewhere that doesn't require me to earn permission to be myself. Her lip trembled. We can still fix this. I shook my head. We can't fix something you never thought was broken until you were the one feeling rejected. Tears welled up, but I didn't wait for them to fall. I opened the door, stepped into the night air, and closed it gently behind me. Days passed. She reached out. A few texts. A missed call. Then another. But I didn't respond. Because she had to understand what it meant when someone stops begging, stops chasing a love that should have been given freely. A week later, she emailed me. A long message filled with memories, confusion, and a single question. Is this really the end? I didn't write back. Because it was the kind you answered by never showing up to be measured again. She had wanted rules. I gave her something else entirely. Silence. And that silence told her everything. Because in the end, she lost me when I finally understood my worth didn't need to be proven. She said, follow my rules, or no intimacy. I said, keep it. And now she knows exactly what real rejection feels like. Not the kind that comes from bitterness or betrayal, but the kind that comes from someone walking away without slamming the door, because they've already closed it in their heart. And when that kind of rejection sets in, there's no negotiation, no list that can bring back what's already gone.
Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.